Well, the rapid change does make use of time series statistics much more difficult. I think it's a mistake to assume that they should be abandoned, though. The simplest approach to structural breaks is to simply say, well, the economy is completely different before the break and after, but that's very seldom really true. There's a nice paper by Marco Del Negro from a decade or two ago about Mexico, where he fitted structural VARs through a period when Mexico had two major crises and reforms. And the lesson of that paper is you do need to allow for breaks, but it's a mistake to model the economy as if it's completely changed between periods with different institutional or legal frameworks. Generally, there's some continuity, and it's worth using whatever information you have from the time series. Certainly, the alternative is not to ignore the data and rely entirely on theory that's unfounded in real data. I was talking about these issues during my keynote speech an hour or so ago, and the lesson of the theory I was talking about there is that it's a mistake to think of this as something that was entirely the responsibility of the central bank. I think it would have been a good idea to avoid dollarization if that was possible. But to do it would have required convincing people that the fiscal system had really changed, that the reputation for not paying debt and for not being able to keep control of the fiscal deficits was ended. There's also a classic paper by Thomas Sargent called The Ends of Four Great Inflations. I think that's approximately the title. It's about the European hyperinflations. And his point is that in each case, the end of an inflation came with a fiscal reform. There had been steady deficits before, and then a new government came in and made changes that convinced people that the fiscal problem was really changed and that there were not going to be unending deficits. So ideally, there would have been a coordinated central bank and fiscal initiative that would have convinced markets that the government was not going to renege on debts, was not going to inflate the debt away. But doing that is always politically difficult because it involves making sacrifices today in order to have a better future, and that's a difficult thing to get political consensus on. Those are two questions. Structural VAR have limitations like any other time series method. There's a long list of them, and I'm not sure which ones particularly stand out. Structural VARs don't, the whole point of the structural VAR is to have a model that doesn't rely on believing a tightly specified story about rational agents, allowing for more richer kinds of behavior by the people in the economy, and using only restrictions, only the minimal a priori restrictions that are required to identify the effects of the policy you're interested in. So they have advantages over models like DSGEs, or dynamic stochastic general equilibrium models. Those models do have complete stories about very unrealistic economic agents, so they can explain in detail how policy, exactly how policy measures have their effects, whereas in a structural VAR, you can estimate the effect, but you can't tell as rich a story about why the effect occurs. Now, the long-run restrictions question, one reason people aren't using it as much as they used to is that people have realized that those long-run restrictions lose their power to help identify the model if you don't know the lag length in the model. So in structural VAR, we assume that data past some distance into the past is not important for predicting the future. If you don't know exactly how far back in the past you have to go, and you have no bound on that, then the long-run restrictions, which for a while were very popular, but they lose all their power to help you identify the model if you're not sure of the lag length. I don't know whether it's more suitable than VARs. I think structural VARs are still very suitable. With the increased computing power available, we can make all kinds of models more realistic. For example, we can do structural vector autoregressions with longer lists of variables. We can do structural VARs where we allow for nonlinearity and non-normality in the disturbances. These were computationally infeasible up until recently. There's also increasing availability of large data sets on the behavior of individual firms or individual people or banks, and there is a lot of research activity trying to exploit those data sets. A lot of useful insights have come out of that. I'm a little worried that the data sets are so attractive to people looking for a thesis topic that we are over-focused on the particular questions you can answer with these particular data sets. There are parts of the economy where we don't have such good data sets, and so we don't get so much research on those parts of the economy. One complaint people have made is that data on the service sector of the economy is much weaker than data on manufacturing or the financial industry. And if you really want to analyze growth and business cycles, you really need to understand the service sector. We don't have these wonderful big data sets on the service sector. So the research is focusing over here on manufacturing, banks, regulated industries where there's lots of data, and very important parts of the economy are getting less attention.